Hi, Democrats. Today is Thursday, October 7th, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. Happy Thursday. Alrighty, so maybe I should just abandon my attempt to talk about bills elected and elections and just make sure that you guys understand my role. What I'm trying to do is make sure that I keep you informed and make sure you know what's going on in Oklahoma Democratic politics. So you guys are all waiting for me to talk about the newest announcement. And we're like, what if I don't? No, I'm kidding. I am going to talk about it. So late last night, it was supposed to be this morning, but late last night, Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister announced that she is switching parties and joining the Democratic Party and running for governor. I'm going to answer the top 3 questions that I've been getting all day long. 1, do I think that she's running as a Democrat, or do I think that she's borrowing RD? I have had conversations with the superintendent prior to her announcement, and because I don't want anybody pretending to be a Democrat just to get across the finish line. And I am convinced from our conversations that she intends to run and govern, should she win, there's a primary, as a Democrat. 2, did I know that this was coming? Yes, I have been having conversations. I've been kind of hinting at it for a little while, that I have been on the hunt for a candidate, and I've been having candidate conversations. And so that's what I do, right? I raise money for the party and I try to find candidates so we have a reason to be Democrats. And so I was aware. I will say that I did not recruit the superintendent. She came to the party, which, you know, is another question that people have been asking. She came to the party, and we are the big tent party. And so we are grateful that, you know, more people are beginning to see the light. More people who are of good conscience and care about what happens in Oklahoma are recognizing that the Republican Party does not represent that anymore, if they ever did. And so folks are coming over, and we've been fielding calls all day with Republicans who have decided to change their registration to Democrats. So let's see what comes of that. Did not recruit her. She came to us. I did know about it. And will we be endorsing her in the primary? This party does not endorse in the primary. We are looking forward to a robust primary. I believe that a primary allows a candidate to get their message out in a easier fashion than if they are running by themselves. So right now, running for governor, because we have a long way to go, running for governor, we have Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister and we have Connie Johnson. Those are the 2 folks that we have running. If you support either of those, I suggest that you get on the bandwagon now. They're going to need your help to be able to make it, because the coffers on the other side are stacked. Alrighty, so that's the announcement that everybody's been talking about. But I had something else I wanted to talk about before I knew that announcement was coming today. I am always looking for things to make sure that Oklahomans are aware of. And I stumbled across an article in USA Today a couple days ago and did a little research. Oklahoma has more police-involved deaths than any state in the union. It's a little bit disappointing. And the reason I mention that, because it's been said that I get out of my lane when I start talking about these things, directly in my lane, because I want to remind people that the sheriff is an elected position. The mayor is an elected position. City council is an elected position. And in our state, that's who determines who the chief of police is. In Tulsa, the mayor picks the chief of police, makes a recommendation that is approved by the city council. In Oklahoma City, the city council hires the city manager, and the city manager hires the chief of police. These are elected position folks. They don't just get there and they don't just climb the ranks. Elected positions affect that. And I want to make sure that you guys are paying attention. Everybody today is talking about the governor's race, and I'm glad, because I need people paying attention. Everybody's talking about the governor's race. A year ago today, everybody was talking about the president's race. Those are not the only races that matter. We ignore the DA and the attorney general and the sheriff's race, but it affects our lives on a daily basis. So, to talk about this in a more informed manner, I brought on a subject matter expert, and I am grateful that Virgil Green has joined us today to talk about this, because this is his subject. This is the subject matter that he is an expert of. Thank you, Virgil.
Hey, thanks for allowing me to come on.
Awesome. So tell the good people where you're from.
Well, originally, I am a native of New Mexico, Hobbs, New Mexico. I'm a transplant to Oklahoma. I moved to Oklahoma in 1989. So I'm a transplant from New Mexico, but Oklahoma is second home now.
Awesome. And your job?
Uh, I've been a police chief for over 22 years, been in law enforcement for over 25. Currently, right now, I'm serving as the director of the new Oklahoma City Convention Center for their safety and security. So, kind of excited to be in another role, but law enforcement is my primary role. So, just glad to be able to join you and talk about this topic that is a concern to you and so many other people.
Awesome. And congratulations on the new gig.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So, I quoted the stat at the top of the top of my live about Oklahomans having the most police involved deaths. Now, it was, we kind of thought it, but to read it in black and white, and it was published from someone outside of Oklahoma, was it a surprise to you?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't, because this is something that had come up before, Alicia, in the media, that has probably, the information has been said, well, it's kind of, the data is not accurate. It's kind of skewed data. But when you've got organizations out there who are collecting that data from the data that between Oklahoma City and Tulsa and many other cities are providing, then that data is not it can't be inaccurate. It has to be pretty accurate. So just when I saw the data come out and the numbers, it wasn't really a surprise.
So, and for those who are
But
watching and
now,
wondering where I got this,
now I will say this: it's kind of surprising with the population of Oklahoma compared to other cities like Detroit and Chicago. When you look and see that Oklahoma is ranked number 2 nationwide, and we have a population which is less than the size of Detroit and Chicago, but the numbers in Oklahoma are much higher, then that's a surprise. That should be a surprise for everybody.
well, I mean, it's interesting, right? We discussed this. It's interesting that whenever folks want to holler about, whenever we bring this topic up and folks say, well, but look at Chicago and all the guns in Chicago, yet the police are the ones, they don't have as many police involved shootings as we do.
Correct, correct. And I'll say this, in defense of what officers do, you come from a law enforcement family, but this is a hard job to do. You're put in situations where you have to protect your life and the life of other citizens. So officers are definitely put in situations where they may have to use deadly force if that is the last resort. And there have been some situations where that has happened. But when you look at the number of officer involved shootings in Oklahoma compared to what is going on in, say, I'm gonna use Atlanta or other major cities, the numbers, Oklahoma City is ranked number 2. Number 1 is St. Louis. So you got St. Louis and then you got Oklahoma City. So those are some numbers that should be concerning when you have that number of people that are being killed by law enforcement.
So something you said, it was interesting. You said when the numbers are misclassified or numbers are misreported, In the USA Today article that was published on September 30th, they said that 84% of police killings in Oklahoma between 1980 and 2018 were either unreported or misclassified. That's 84%, whereas nationwide the number is 55%. I don't want to believe that Oklahoma officers don't know how to report, but what else is that data telling me?
Well, it's telling you basically if there's an officer involved shooting, maybe it may not be classified as an officer involved shooting. It can be, and it depends upon the agency. Again, you've got the two major cities, which is Oklahoma City and Tulsa, but you also have other agencies in Oklahoma that that this that this data is being gathered from. But the two main sources is Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Um, so that you have to ask yourself, how is that information being classified as the manner of death with that individual? Uh, for other people to look at that data to say, okay, well, was this, what other type of shooting could this have been versus an officer involved shooting?
Okay, so I come from a law enforcement family, but I'm not law enforcement.
Hmm.
When I hear maybe it was officer involved or it's not, I'm saying either an officer discharged his firearm or he
Or
didn't.
didn't? Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you can't change it. I mean, again, just like you said, either you fired your weapon or you didn't fire your weapon. And so when you share that data, you've got to be transparent as to was this a officer involved shooting or was it not? And so because again, everybody is looking at the police for accountability, but you've got to be able to make sure that that information that you're providing to the public, which you should be providing to the public. And this is one thing, at least, it's one thing to provide good data, but it's one thing to not provide bad data. So there again, things do happen that are out of some officer's control where people understand that you may have to use deadly force, but at the same time, it's very important for you to accurately report that data. So when organizations do come in and ask for the information, they don't, it's not, okay, well, hey, we found some flaws with this information we received because we found that your information is showing something else, but you're telling us something different.
So I agree. We need our police departments to be transparent for sure. But I mean, what say you to the fact that we as a state are um, our officers are shooting more folks? I mean, just I was going to try and say it in a more intelligent way, but our officers are shooting more folks.
Yeah.
I don't believe that our folks who encounter police are more dangerous, more hazardous, more threatening than the rest of the nation.
Hmm. Well, it's not. And I mean, there again, when you look at the size of Oklahoma City compared to the other cities, you have to ask yourself, why is Oklahoma City ranked number two behind St. Louis? And actually, St. Louis, I believe, is a much smaller city than Oklahoma City is. So you've got two cities that are not really comparable in size, but there are a lot more officer involved shootings in these two cities. And the fact that uh, black males make up the majority of those officer involved shootings when the population does not equate to the number of black men that are being killed.
So, not to jump to conclusions, but that doesn't sound good, right?
Well, it doesn't. And again, I think when you look at the things let's just use Oklahoma City, for example. There's a lot of good things that's going on in Oklahoma City. But when you look at there is a higher number of officer involved shootings, and that here you are in the national news that you're number two in the nation with officer involved shootings. But there again, another part of that conversation is the fact what race are these individuals that are involved in these officer involved shootings, and the majority of them are African American men. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what is the population of Oklahoma with minorities. And
And
the
Oklahoma City is just overrun with African American men, huh?
yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, and so it's something that you got to ask yourself what is going on and how. And but the biggest question is, what is the police department doing to change that? Because once you realize that you do have a problem, what are you doing to correct the problem? And there again, everybody in the law enforcement community is going to say, well, there are some things that you cannot control. Yeah, we understand that because you can use less lethal force uh, to take a person into custody. And I think one of the things, Alicia, if I have say this real quick, is that we get caught up into sometimes the training that we've received is that if a person has a knife, they're just as deadly as a person with a gun. So if you remember some months ago, past this past year, we had or this summer we had an individual named Benny Edwards who was killed, who I believe he had a knife. He was quite some distance from those officers, um, but they tried to use less lethal force. But the type of clothing that he had on did not have an impact, and I don't think people really fully understood that. Is that if you shoot somebody with a taser and you have on a winter coat, it's not going to be effective. And so here was a person who had a knife, but there again, deadly force was used, and now as a result of that, the Oklahoma County District Attorney's Office has filed charges against that officer involved in that shooting. So that's just one of the other 24 shootings that you talked about that has occurred this year.
Now, I don't think that anybody believes that being a police officer is a walk in the park, right?
No,
I,
no.
I, I think we all understand that there, sadly, sometimes is the need for deadly force. But in the instance that you just cited, here's the thing: because there have been so many, what appears to the general public, um, I'm trying to think of a word that I'm okay to say on the air. Um, Shootings that weren't justified, just weren't, because there were so many.
Mhm.
It's amazing to me, and I promised you I wouldn't beat you up, so I'm not going to. But it's amazing to me when law enforcement say, well, they pull out the one and they say, well, this one he had on too many clothes, and the tasers didn't matter, didn't penetrate. I get that, but because
I'm gonna jump in because it looks like the chair may have lost her feed, which is,
Yeah,
and
it
I
does.
apologize for that.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say this, Scott, when she comes back on, looking at the two cities, St. Louis and Oklahoma City, according to the census information in 2018, St. Louis population was 311,273 people. There were the black population in St. Louis is 145,000, but there were 37 black killed by police in St. Louis. And so when you go and you look at Oklahoma City, the population 2018 census showed 637,000 people with a black population of 91,000 with 25 black people killed. So you kind of see the difference in the population and as well as the number of African American men that are being killed by police.
Sure.
ran out of charge. So did you ask? Because what I was getting to is, because there have been so many bad shootings,
Mhm.
because there have been so many bad shootings, it leads the general public to be suspicious.
Yeah,
It leads us to be suspicious. And then when I find out that 84% of police killings uh, are unreported or misclassified, it makes me even more suspicious.
yeah. Well, it's definitely when you say unreported and misclassified. The misclassified Why would it be misclassified? Was there just an error in it being misclassified? But then also, if it was misclassified, was there an attempt to correct that error to make sure that that data is correct?
So there's that, and then here's my question about the fact that we have the highest rate of police violence against Black Americans. I mean, I don't want to believe that there's training that says, you know, the darker the hue, the more lethal the force, but it feels like that's what's happening.
Well, and there again, when you look at the population of Oklahoma City with the African American population, which is you've got the white population, you've got Latino population, then you got African Americans. So African Americans are
Don't forget our indigenous folks.
yeah indigenous, and so yeah, didn't want to make sure that I just over, but thank you for saying that. But there again, you've got the minorities of African American, Native Americans, and Latinos are in the low percentage of the population. But when you've got African American and Latinos are the numbers are high when it comes to officer involved shootings and death, you got to ask yourself why is that, and also what is being done to correct that. Now, yeah, there are whites that are being killed, but not at the same rate that blacks are. And I think it's really important when you look at the data and to make that the data is accurate. The data is not flawed. The data is not somebody just didn't input these numbers. This information is coming from a law enforcement source. It's not coming from some, paid source to say, hey, we just randomly picked this number and we put these numbers together. I think people need to understand that the data is coming from a law enforcement source. So
Well,
when you have a population like that, you definitely ask yourself, and again, police officers don't just start their shift off saying, hey, we're going to kill somebody today. That's not the mentality of police officers. There are times that you do encounter individuals that, again, like you said, you do have to make that decision to use deadly force. But when you do use that deadly force, when you when you share that data, make sure it's shared in the way that where people understand that information.
so Virgil, I wanna thank you because I wanted to have a meaningful conversation based on the facts, based on the data, and based on someone who knew knew the subject matter way better than I could ever imagine. My big reason for inviting you on is perspective, right? I wanted to try and give a balanced perspective. Um, but the real reason that I do my live every day is I want to make sure that Oklahoma Democrats understand that there's more at stake during elections than president and governor. And you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention because when we skip the DA and we skip the mayor and we skip the attorney general on the ballot, we spend the next 2 or 4 years upset,
Yeah,
disappointed because we haven't been paying attention. And so I just want to. It's more than me saying, hey, y'all pay attention. I want to provide facts, and I want to thank you, Chief Green, for
hey,
coming and joining us and giving us a perspective.
well, and thank you again. And just glad to be able to join you and share that information with you. And like you said, Alicia, the local elections are really important. And just like your sheriff election is really important. And you got to have somebody who is engaging with the public. And when the public has questions, then you are looking to that person who was elected by the people to give some answers and not just kind of blow it off to the side because there's uh, an incident that took place that is being really left out of the public eye with the death of an 18-year-old here in Oklahoma City who drowned in a swimming pool, and his death is still not being solved as to the manner of death. And so, and the sheriff department is investigating that, but this is an elected official, but they haven't been very open and transparent with the public about it.
So we need to be asking the questions and holding folks accountable. Thank you so
Exactly.
very much for joining me, Virgil.
Thank you.
All righty. Stick around. I want to talk to you in a little bit. So Oklahoma Democrats, I know that I got a little deep and a little heavy today, but I just think it's really important that we pay attention to all elections. And right now, as far as I know, we don't have a candidate for sheriff for Tulsa County, and we desperately need one. So if you know somebody who needs to step up, or if you're thinking about stepping up, now is the time. Now is the time. We need someone who will answer the questions. Why is it dangerous to be a Black male in Oklahoma when you encounter the police, more so than in Chicago, in Detroit, in Atlanta, where we hear about those kinds of crimes? Why is that? We need to get to the bottom of it, but we also need to resolve it. And how we can resolve it is in the ballot box. All righty, guys, thanks for joining me. And I will be back here tomorrow at 4:15.